So you are a young person listening to this and saying this grandpa keeps talking and talking, but what can he tell me about my future? Where is CO2 headed? Well, this is what the models are built for. You check them for the past to make sure they are doing sensible things, and then you want to say what happens in the future. So in 2011, one model estimated that at least 74% of the climate change since 1950 was due to human activity. What does that mean? As we said before, climate has always changed and it will continue to change because of the natural processes of sun's energy changing in distribution or amount, and the internal feedbacks, ice albedo feedbacks, which continue to happen. But we are changing the way climate is changing and the rate, how fast it is changing and so on. So we can use the models to say, if we didn't have all the CO2 increase, what would have happened? For the older ones, this means the counterfactual world. This is the world we are living in, which is the factual world, but a model will allow you to say, stop increasing the CO2, and then it'll say where the climate would have gone if we didn't emit all these greenhouse gases. So doing this kind of detective work, we can say 74% of climate change since 1950 was due to human activity. Meanwhile, the global population had been growing steadily, so there were more people who needed cars, more factories were needed to produce goods, and forests were cut down to make more living space. Urbanization happened, agriculture kept expanding, and even as temperatures warmed and rainfall shifted, some forests died because of climate change as well. And of course, there is a lot of deforestation and logging, and by 2016 the CO2 levels hit 400 ppm. That was the highest it had been for 4 million years. We know this from ice core evidence and so on. The news obviously made headlines. Scientists realized warming was happening faster and faster. So we have had disappearing rainforests, which we are monitoring with satellites and airplanes and drones and so on. Rainforests are thought to hold half of all the different life forms we have on Earth, but thousands and thousands of acres of forest are lost every day to logging and degradation and disturbance and so on. And this obviously threatens many species of wildlife, which are a critical part of the functioning of the planet as we know it. Trees are cleared to make way for homes and farms, and also to provide wood. High temperatures and long dry periods destroy rainforests too. Amazon has faced tremendous pressure from people logging, cutting down trees for wood and timber, and also to climate change, changes in temperature and rainfall. All those downed trees release great amounts of CO2 and no longer give off oxygen if they are gone. That changes the carbon cycle balance further, warming our climate. I have talked about carbon cycle elsewhere in this course, in other sections that you can follow up. So here you have a simple structure of the forest, with the forest floor that is teeming with life. Everything gets recycled. There are insects and birds and reptiles and so on living, and there is an understory, and the canopy layer is where all the leaves are, and then there is an emergent layer. So you can imagine when the algae went from ocean to land, they started to grow and they started to compete and started to get taller and taller to get sunlight for photosynthesis and so on. Beautiful evolution over hundreds of millions of years, and now we are changing things at a very rapid scale compared to evolution. So where do we go in the future? You're obviously worried about your future, as you should be, because we have to see where we are going in the future, and that it can be done with the models. But what do you need? If we say the past climate has been changing now, let's say in the Holocene or after industrial revolution, because we are increasing carbon dioxide, we are deforesting, we are urbanizing, we are doing agriculture, and we are driving around and so on. If you want to say, ask the model what will happen in the future, then The model doesn't know what we will do with energy. Will we continue to burn fossil fuels? It doesn't know how population will change. We have to tell it what the population will do. We have to tell it what kind of cars we'll be driving and what we will be doing in terms of our wars and our plans for reducing our impact and adjusting our lives to changes that are happening and so on and so forth. Those things are created as future scenarios. You think of a scenario where we do nothing and we keep going and we call it a business as usual, or we decide this is not good, we will reduce our impact by taking out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It's called carbon capture, and we put it away somewhere. We call it carbon sequestration, or we use the captured carbon in something in making polyester or other things, or putting it into soda, and we call it carbon utilization. So we have carbon capture, utilization and sequestration and so on and so forth. So the models and the observations tell us where we have been in the past, so we can go back to 1850. We're looking at the temperatures with the baseline, and then we are going into the future with models. So we start with 1850 and we come into 2020 or so, when these model projections, they are called. There is weather prediction and climate prediction, and when you go into the future with these scenarios, they are called projections. Okay, so the near linear relationship, let me not read that. So there are different ways in which we imagine the future, call them shared socio-economic pathways. If you don't understand, don't worry about it. Basically talks about how CO2 emission will change in the future, whether we'll be able to take it out, whether we'll use more bioenergy, more renewable energy, more electric vehicles, and we'll be friendly to each other and green technology, or we'll keep fighting with each other, and an Israel war and the Russian war, and there is always some war somewhere. So that tells you that if we go into the future, it is expected that the CO2 will begin to increase. Anyways, the cumulative carbon will keep growing. Remember, if CO2 is very inert and doesn't easily disappear, that means it will stay in the atmosphere for centuries, which means it will keep accumulating. It has been accumulating from the past. This is the scale here in gigatons of CO2. So you have to go figure out what gigatons is. That is 10 to the 9 tons of CO2, and it has been accumulating and accumulating and accumulating, and there is warming and warming and warming. If we keep going, then we can cause a lot of warming if we don't do anything, and we can keep it to some safer level if we are careful and reduce our impact, and we take out CO2 and increase green technology and EVs and renewable energy and so on. So kids, should you be scared? Not at all. Pay attention, decide what you want to do, how much energy you want to consume. Most importantly, don't waste energy, don't waste water, don't waste food. You have to decide how many clothes you need, how many new clothes you're going to buy, how long you will use your phone and your computer, whether you'll buy a new one every year, even the old one is running very well, and so on and so forth. So don't feel guilty. Just think about the future, think about what you can do, and be positive. Have a vision for the future. Dream of building rockets, going to Mars, going to Moon, and saving the planet by becoming a good citizen, an innovator, or a social scientist who helps people adjust to increasing climate change or warming and so on. You become a journalist who writes about it. We become a doctor who helps people with their health. You become an engineer or a politician who makes decisions that will help reduce climate impacts and so on and so forth. So you have a role to play if you keep paying attention, and be optimistic. Don't panic, don't feel anxious. World is not coming to an end. We will find solutions, so keep putting your eye to solutions, and think positively and see what contributions you can make. And the best thing you can do is to keep learning and keep watch the news, who's doing good things, who's building more efficient cars or more efficient energy production and storage, how people are finding ways to do new things. You may not need, look for new technologies that are very efficient and reducing energy use, right? Big energy uses come from buildings, from transportation, and we're emitting CO2 from agriculture in the way we are doing it, and so on and so forth. So always pay attention to where the carbon is coming from and where it is going. Can you increase the number of ways the carbon can be taken down, like let's say by not cutting down forests, not warming the ocean? So some things are in your control, some things are too big, but as a collective species we can do a lot of things. So just don't panic. My message is, don't panic, don't get anxious, just be positive, try to do something and follow people who are doing something. Keep learning, keep watching, and keep going, kids. Have fun. See you in the next section, which is on vicious circles. So we mentioned this already several times. Positive feedbacks in the system, like the ice albedo feedback that we talked about. You do a little perturbation and it will come back and amplify the little perturbation. We call it a vicious circle or positive feedback. See you in the next podcast then.